At exactly 5 a.m., Washington sent shockwaves across the continent. Donald Trump declared that South American cartels would no longer be treated as mere criminals, but as terrorists, enemies of the state. With a single order, the battlefield shifted from local police operations to Pentagon war rooms. Overnight, the cartels were elevated to the same category as ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and the U.S. military was given full authority to hunt them down. In Mexico and across the Americas, drones were already airborne. MQ-9 Reapers, capable of flying 30 hours straight at 500 kilometers per hour, scanned cartel strongholds with synthetic aperture radar, powerful enough to see through clouds and jungle canopies. Each data stream built a live map of warehouses, safe houses, and hidden airstrips, while satellites fed coordinates to strike teams preparing precision raids. The tone was unmistakable. This was not policing, it was war. A war where billion-dollar cartels, armed like private armies, would now face Marines, SEALs, and the full weight of the Pentagon. But here lies the real question. Is this the beginning of America's next endless conflict? Or the decisive blow that will end the cartel's reign of terror once and for all? By 6:15 a.m., the shock of Trump's declaration had already rippled through military and intelligence networks. The Department of Defense moved swiftly, transferring operational control from the DEA and Homeland Security to U.S. Southern Command. What once was a law enforcement mission instantly transformed into a military campaign. The orders were clear. Cartels would now be targeted with the same playbook once used against insurgents in Iraq and Afghanistan. Cartels were not just criminal gangs. They had grown into shadow states. Intelligence estimated their annual revenue at over $60 billion, fueled by cocaine shipments, fentanyl production, arms trafficking, and human smuggling. In northern Mexico, they operated checkpoints on highways, collected taxes from local businesses, and patrolled neighborhoods with convoys of armored trucks. One cartel faction even fielded modified drones carrying improvised explosives, mimicking battlefield tactics from Syria. For Washington, the line between organized crime and terrorism had officially disappeared. The Pentagon's first step was surveillance. At 7:42 a.m., an RQ-170 Sentinel stealth drone crossed into Mexican airspace at 45,000 feet, invisible to most radar. Below, cartels scrambled their lookouts, men stationed on rooftops with radios and binoculars, but they were powerless against the sensor arrays orbiting above. Each infrared scan lit up hidden stockpiles, while signals intelligence intercepted encrypted communications between cartel lieutenants. Meanwhile, MQ-9 Reapers fanned out across the Yucatan Peninsula and the northern deserts. Flying at a cruising altitude of 15 kilometers, their cameras tracked convoys of SUVs moving between safe houses. One target stood out, a sprawling warehouse complex near Monterrey, suspected of storing up to 20 tons of fentanyl precursors. Inside the Situation Room in Washington, analysts watched in real time as drones relayed every movement, from guards pacing with assault rifles to trucks loading at dawn. The human element was just as tense. Drone operators sitting in Nevada leaned forward, hands tight on their controls, scanning every pixel on their screens. They knew cartel spotters had access to shoulder-fired man-pads smuggled from conflict zones capable of striking low-flying aircraft. Every orbit felt like a gamble. One wrong move could expose the mission. Maintain altitude. Do not dip below 15,000, came the instruction through encrypted channels. The tension was palpable, sweat dripping as the operators locked sensors on their prey. By 9:30 a.m., the mapping phase was complete. Dozens of red markers lit up on the Pentagon's digital map, airstrips in Sinaloa, hidden labs in Michoacan, fuel theft depots in Veracruz, and fortified ranches guarded like military bases. This was no longer scattered intelligence, it was a battle plan. Each coordinate would become a potential strike site, ready for precision raids or missile strikes. But the decision weighed heavy. Authorizing U.S. Marines and SEAL teams to cross into sovereign Mexican territory risked igniting a regional crisis. Mexico's government had already issued statements condemning any breach of sovereignty, yet American generals argued that cartels had turned those territories into lawless war zones. From Washington's perspective, the cost of inaction, over 100,000 American lives lost annually to fentanyl overdoses, was too great to ignore. Inside the Pentagon's Joint Operations Center, planners finalized Operation Iron Dagger, a campaign that would unfold in phases. Phase 1, intelligence gathering and mapping. Phase 2, limited precision strikes to cripple cartel command nodes. Phase 3, raids by special operations forces to dismantle leadership structures. The model was identical to counter-terror campaigns in Mosul and Raqqa, but now it was being applied within America's own hemisphere. The climax of this stage came when the finished target package was transmitted to the White House. On the screen, a sprawling network of red, yellow, and green markers spanned from Mexico City to the jungles of Colombia. Advisors explained, red meant high-priority nodes like labs and command centers, yellow meant logistics hubs, green marked financial safe houses. For the first time, the United States held a complete war map of the cartel's empire. Now the burden shifted to politics. Would the president authorize cross-border strikes, risking confrontation with Mexico, or hold back and rely only on sanctions and seizures? The choice was stark: strike hard and early, or watch cartels continue to expand unchecked. If you were in that chair, staring at a map of billions in cartel assets and thousands of lives hanging in the balance, what would you do? Would you launch the first wave, or wait and risk being seen as weak? At 10 a.m., the Situation Room fell into tense silence. The president's declaration had already rattled global headlines, but now the real debate began. Around the polished oak table sat senior advisors, generals, and intelligence chiefs. Their mission was to weigh the cost of turning the war on drugs into a literal war. Supporters of the move laid out cold statistics. Over 100,000 Americans were dying each year from fentanyl overdoses, a death toll exceeding that of most modern wars. In 2024 alone, cartels earned an estimated $13 billion from human trafficking, funneling migrants through dangerous routes while flooding U.S. streets with narcotics. One advisor compared the cartel's structure to ISIS: command hierarchies, paramilitary fighters, armored vehicles, and global supply chains. To do nothing, they argued, was to allow a foreign enemy to slaughter Americans with impunity. Critics, however, raised dire warnings. Mexico was not a battlefield in the Middle East. It was a neighbor, and the United States' second-largest trading partner. Striking targets inside its borders without permission could ignite a diplomatic crisis, destabilize the region, and push Mexican politics further into chaos. Some cautioned that military raids might unite cartel factions against Washington, creating a protracted insurgency on America's doorstep. Yet the weight of public pressure was undeniable. With overdose deaths climbing, communities across the U.S. demanded action. In a single stroke, Trump's move had redefined the battlefield, shifting the conversation from policing cartels to destroying them. By 11:30 a.m., the decision was sealed. Cartels would be officially designated as foreign terrorist organizations. The label unlocked powerful legal tools, asset freezes, sanctions, and the full authorization of Pentagon resources. For the first time in history, cartels would be treated like Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah, not smugglers or criminals. This was no longer just a domestic policy fight. It was a global signal that America was prepared to use its military against transnational cartels. The question hanging in the air was simple, yet terrifying. Once the Pentagon unleashed its strike teams, could the genie ever be put back in the bottle? Before we move forward to the battlefield itself, let me ask you this. If the U.S. goes all in, do you believe it can break the cartel's grip? Or will this be the start of an endless war? At exactly 2 a.m., Operation Iron Dagger shifted from planning to execution. The night sky above northern Mexico carried the faint hum of engines as waves of American aircraft crossed invisible lines. This was no ordinary law enforcement mission. It was a full-spectrum military campaign designed to dismantle an empire that had grown too powerful to ignore. From the Gulf of Mexico, U.S. Navy destroyers launched reconnaissance UAVs equipped with advanced AESA radar arrays. Each drone swept vast corridors of terrain, transmitting real-time maps of roads, compounds, and heat signatures to command centers in Texas and Florida. Above them, stealthy RQ-170 Sentinels cruised at 45,000 feet. Their synthetic aperture radar capable of penetrating camouflage netting and jungle canopies. Simultaneously, MQ-9 Reapers began their orbits at 15 kilometers altitude. Each drone carried Hellfire missiles and GBU-39 small-diameter bombs, but their primary mission in the opening phase was surveillance. Operators tracked convoys of SUVs moving across dirt roads, suspected to be cartel reinforcements alerted by spotters. The enemy's eyes were everywhere. Lookouts perched on rooftops, armed with radios and binoculars. But against the Pentagon's aerial web, their signals were quickly intercepted and jammed. The silence broke when two Hellfires streaked down from a Reaper, annihilating a cartel relay station outside Reynosa. The explosion ripped through radio towers, leaving lieutenants cut off and scrambling. Within seconds, EC-130H compass call aircraft flooded the airwaves with jamming pulses, smothering cartel communications across a 100-kilometer radius. For the first time, gunmen who had long enjoyed tactical coordination found themselves isolated, unable to call reinforcements or warn their leaders. Across the border, MV-22 Ospreys thundered forward at speeds exceeding 500 kilometers per hour, carrying platoons of U.S. Marines. Escorting them were AH-64E Apaches, their pylons loaded with Hydra 70 rockets, Hellfires, and 30mm chain guns. Each Osprey carried 12 Marines in full combat kit, rifles locked, and night vision optics glowing. Their target, a fortified ranch compound in Nuevo Leon, one of the largest fentanyl hubs on record. Cartel spotters raised the alarm the moment they heard rotor blades. Heavy machine guns and RPG-7s opened fire from sandbagged positions, tracer rounds lacing the night sky. The Apaches responded instantly. Rockets shrieked down, obliterating bunkers and tearing through gun nests. Marines fast roped into the compound, breaching steel gates with C4. Room by room, they advanced under suppressive fire, clearing with M4 carbines and flashbang grenades. Inside, they uncovered massive stockpiles of precursor chemicals, ammunition crates, and ledgers documenting billions in revenue. Farther south, MH-60 Blackhawks skimmed low over farmland, carrying Delta Force operators toward a clandestine airstrip. Intelligence revealed the site was a major logistics node for cocaine flights. Bound for the U.S. operators stormed the hangars, capturing aircraft preloaded with cargo. Within minutes, explosives cratered the runway, rendering it useless. The entire site went up in flames as Delta teams exfiltrated under cover of AC-130 gunship fire. The cartels, however, were not helpless. In Sinaloa, a Reaper guiding Marines toward a convoy was suddenly targeted by a Russian-made Igla manpads. A bright streak shot upward, and the Reaper exploded in midair, debris raining into the jungle. Cheers erupted among cartel fighters, emboldened by their first kill. They scrambled technicals, pickup trucks fitted with heavy machine guns, and launched a counterattack against advancing Marines. But retaliation came swiftly. F-15 EX Strike Eagles, orbiting high above, dropped precision JDAMS onto the convoy, igniting a chain of explosions that lit the sky for miles. The counterattack collapsed before it even began. In Veracruz, Navy SEALs launched from MH-47 Chinooks and fast-roped onto coastal warehouses. Intelligence identified the facility as a cartel logistics hub for maritime smuggling routes. SEALs breached the compound under heavy resistance, trading fire with entrenched gunmen. Grenades cleared stairwells, and suppressed carbines cut down defenders in seconds. When the dust settled, SEALs discovered shipping containers loaded with weapons and narcotics ready for export. Explosive charges reduced the warehouses to rubble before dawn. At the same time, Marines in Tamaulipas pressed deeper into cartel territory. Street by street, they engaged in brutal firefights. Civilians fled as convoys of cartel fighters attempted to block Marine armor support, but the Marines had air dominance. Every rooftop sniper was spotted by drones and eliminated by precision fire. As pressure mounted, cartel leaders activated hidden reserves. Convoys of technicals roared down highways, firing wildly to cover retreating assets. RPGs streaked toward Osprey's landing reinforcements, one striking a Black Hawk mid-flight. The helicopter spun violently before crashing into a sugarcane field. Miraculously, most of the crew survived, extracted under heavy covering fire. Yet the incident underscored the danger. These were not disorganized criminals, but paramilitary forces with battlefield-level weapons. The Marines answered with overwhelming firepower. Apaches shredded convoys with 30mm cannons, while AC-130s poured 105mm shells onto reinforced cartel compounds. Entire city blocks lit up in flames as armored safehouses crumbled under direct hits. The climax came when Delta Force cornered a senior cartel lieutenant in Michoacan. Captured alive, he provided intelligence on hidden tunnels and financial networks stretching as far as Guatemala and Colombia. At the same time, SEAL teams seized encrypted laptops and hard drives in Veracruz, promising a treasure trove of data on cartel operations. For the Pentagon, this was gold. Proof that the offensive was dismantling not just the fighters, but the system itself. By this point, nearly a dozen cartel compounds lay in ruins. Entire arsenals of weapons had been seized, including anti-aircraft guns, RPGs, and even armored vehicles. Hundreds of millions in cash and drugs were destroyed. For the first time in decades, cartel command structures were paralyzed. Messages intercepted by U.S. intelligence revealed panic among cartel bosses, some ordering subordinates to scatter and flee across borders. But the cost was undeniable. 2 Marines killed in action, several others wounded, 1 Black Hawk destroyed, a Reaper lost. Each casualty a reminder that America's might did not make the campaign bloodless. The cartels had drawn blood, but they had paid in scale. Fortresses burned, leaders captured, convoys destroyed. As dawn lit the horizon, the battlefield told its story. Smoke plumes stretched skyward. Explosions still echoed in the distance. Marines regrouped, consolidating gains, while engineers planted charges to demolish remaining drug labs. The night had redrawn the balance of power. For the cartels, the raids shattered their aura of invincibility. For Washington, it was proof that treating cartels as terrorists could yield battlefield results. And for the world, it was a message. America had unleashed its war machine, not in the Middle East, not in Europe, but here, in the Americas, against criminal empires masquerading as states. Yet the question lingered. Had Operation Iron Dagger broken the cartel's back, or merely pushed them into a corner, ready to retaliate with vengeance? Because in war, victory is never just about the first strike. It is about what comes next. So what do you think? Was this the decisive blow that will cripple the cartels? Or the spark that ignites a long, grinding conflict across the hemisphere? By 5 a.m., the first wave of Operation Iron Dagger was complete. Across northern and central Mexico, smoke plumes rose above demolished warehouses and gutted airstrips. Satellite images confirmed the scale of destruction. Nearly 70% of identified cartel infrastructure in the target zones had been reduced to rubble. Intelligence estimated direct financial losses exceeding $6.4 billion. Drug stockpiles incinerated, convoys obliterated, and command nodes silenced. The decisive strike came just before dawn. From the Gulf of Mexico, a U.S. Navy destroyer launched a salvo of Tomahawk cruise missiles, each weighing 3,500 pounds and flying low at subsonic speeds. Their targets were two fortified underground bunkers in Veracruz, known as Cartel Command and Control Hubs. At 5:12 a.m., the missiles tore through reinforced concrete, detonating with such force that seismographs in nearby towns registered the blast. When the smoke cleared, both bunkers were gone, along with the leadership inside. The cost was not without sacrifice. 2 Marines lost their lives in close combat, and 1 Black Hawk helicopter was destroyed during extraction. Their loss underscored the brutal truth. Even America's unmatched power carries a price. Yet within hours, Pentagon officials reported that the cartel's operational capacity in several key regions had been crippled beyond immediate recovery. The strategic impact reached far beyond the battlefield. For Mexico's citizens, long trapped under cartel dominance, the raid signaled that the shadow armies ruling their streets were not invincible. For Washington's allies, it was proof that the United States would apply overwhelming force against non-state actors threatening its people, even when those enemies hid inside sovereign borders. And for America's adversaries abroad, it carried an unmistakable warning. Whether in the Middle East, Europe, or the Americas, U.S. power could reach anywhere with devastating precision. Still, the operation left the world divided. Supporters hailed it as a historic blow against transnational terror. Critics warned of escalation, pointing to the likelihood of cartel reprisals and diplomatic fallout with Mexico City. Yet one reality was undeniable. The rules of engagement had changed forever. Cartels were no longer treated as criminals. They were enemies in a war. In less than 3 hours, the United States had redrawn the line. It had shown that when its people are threatened, the response would not be measured in words or sanctions, but in firepower and steel. For America's allies, the message was reassuring. For its enemies, it was chilling. And for the cartels who once believed themselves untouchable, it was catastrophic. So here's the question that remains. Was this a single, decisive blow that will finally end the cartel's grip, or the opening shot of a war that will burn across the Americas for years to come?